Bismillah minash shaitanir rajim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala ashrafil anbiya mursaleen khatimin nabiyyin Abul Qasim Muhammad salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yesterday we discussed very briefly, it's a very long topic, but with the time constraint, discuss very briefly what is happening in the Muslim world and what was the cause of it. We discussed briefly the history of the Nawasib and in the first 300 years and what legacy it has left in today's world. Now, if we review the history of Nawasib with a very open mind, and my hint is not here, my hint is outside this place, with very open mind, with no bias. We don't have a bias. If my brother Sunni Muslims are reviewing the history of Nawasib, then we can sit down and discuss and resolve certain differences we have in the theology. Today we are going to discuss what was the impact of Karbala, and also very recently there is something, and even it is among the Shia community, that they have got that concept of calling everything bid'ah. So I'll briefly discuss about that. Dua Tawassul, some have declared it as bid'ah. We are sitting here and commemorating the martyrdom of our Imam, that is declared as a bid'ah. So I'm going to address that very briefly. Now, 300 years after the Prophet's death, the orthodox Sunni ulama, the scholars, realized that they took one particular family, one person, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Mazallah, and I've told you yesterday, Dr. Hussain's book is addressing those facts with very reliable resources, and they assassinated the character of the Imam. And they realized and there were only 3 Khalifas in the league. So after 300 years, they coined the term Khulafai Rashidin, where the 4th Khalifa was added. And then they tried to reconcile, because with the reason that now if you are giving importance to the Sahabas, if you're giving importance to the Tabi'un, here is one companion who the Prophet gave his daughter to him. How can he be such a character? So they started smoothing it out, but the damage had been done. And later, in the medieval period, it has started with the Kharjis and the Umayyads, and then the Ibadis, and then the Zahiris. The Zahiris were the literalists, like the Kharjis. Ibadis and Zahiris were the offshoots of the Kharjis. And then in the medieval period, the Salafi movement started with Ibn Taymiyyah. Now, Ibn Taymiyyah was a character. It is recorded in the history that he was driven out of Medina. He went and said, demolish this tomb of the Prophet. And he was thrown out of Medina. But they became very important figures, the Salafi movement, and their offshoot today is the Wahhabi movement. Now, according to the Sunni belief that there were 10 Sahabas who were guaranteed Jannah by the Prophet. We don't have that belief. There's 10 Sahabas, the 4 Khalifas, Talha, Zubair, Saad ibn Abi Waqqas, Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, Saad ibn Zayd, and Abu Ubaidah al-Jarrah. The Prophet declared, according to the Sunni belief, that they are guaranteed Jannah. Now, we have discussed yesterday that the obedience of the Prophet is mandatory. We are, as a Muslim, if we have belief in the Quran, then we have to obey. We cannot disobey the Prophet. We discussed yesterday that there were 2 paramount events of Islam. One was the Ghadir, that was a socio-political event, and other, what is narrated in Hadith al-Taqlain, that was a spiritual event. One was a socio-political event, one was a spiritual event. Now, if you take the Shahada, La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, as one side of a coin, the other side of the coin is the oath of Ghadir. And when you are erasing one side of the coin, your coin has become invalid. If there is no Ali and Waliullah, your coin is invalid. You have only La ilaha illallah, no Ali and Waliullah. Because that was what the Prophet did. And whatever the Prophet said, whatever action the Prophet did was dictated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet never did anything on his own. Now, you have out of the 10 people who are guaranteed the heaven, who are so pious, 9 of them denied both these events, the oath of Ghadir and the Hadith Taqlain. And that is demonstrated. I mean, I'm talking historical facts. First, the oath of Ghadir was broken. The Prophet was denied a paper and a pen. They denied the Prophet's order of joining Osama bin Zayd when the Prophet wanted them out. And that led to Saqifa. And how can Saqifa be democratic? When the Prophet's kin, the Banu Hashim were not in Saqifa, how can that election be democratic? Democratic means every person. If I am voting for the governor of Florida, if I don't vote, it is different. But I should have the right to vote for the governor of Florida. Only then it will become democratic. When they were ready, making the graves, trying to bury the Prophet, here the incident of Saqifa took place. And even in the incident of Saqifa, when the Ansar wanted to elect their leader, they said no, the Quraysh are the leaders. So when they insisted that Quraysh are the leader, it is recorded in Tabari, like I have told you, what all I am uttering today, I have backing from authentic sources. Anytime you ask me, I'll send you photocopies of that, of the books. So now, when the Ansar said, okay, if Quraysh is supposed to be leader, get the best. Get Ali ibn Abi Talib. Salawat Muhammad alayhi. Then, you denied the rights to Fatima. It was, Fadak was given by her father, and there were 2 people there. Her husband, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and her maid, Fizza. So they said, okay, get the proofs, 2 adults or 2 females substituting another. It couldn't have happened because one male and one female. They denied it. According to the Shia historian, the house of Fatima was burned, but Tabari writes that Umar ibn Khattab had given the commandments, go and burn the house of Fatima and drag Ali outside, because Ali and other Banu Hashim were in the house after Saqifa took place. Then even we discussed yesterday what Umar ibn Khattab's opinion about Banu Umayyah was, and even in spite of that, he installs Muawiyah ibn Sufyan as the governor of Syria. And then we discussed yesterday what Usman ibn Affan did, the installation of governors, and that's when the corruption started. That's where the downfall started. Now, as long as rulers and religions do not commingle, it's fine. Here in our government, the United States, you have a ruler who is political, and we are here practicing our religion, no problem, fine. But when the ruler who is not eligible to be a religious leader tries to meddle with the religion, then the downfalls of the society start. It is like giving the sword of religion to Genghis Khan. Or an example of Europe is in the 3rd century when the Roman Emperor Constantine became a Christian and he started meddling with Christianity. That's where the downfall of the Christianity started. Even that was a message of Allah. And that's where the downfall started. Corruption in Christianity started. And look what happened after that to Europe. And they bounced back only in the 14th or 15th century. For 10,000 years, for 1,000 years, Europeans were living in dark ages. When Dr. Nasser completed his education here at Harvard and MIT and Harvard and went back to Tehran, he was coached by Allama Tabatabai. And he was an intellectual here of the highest standards, and he had intellectual friends here, and a professor of Colgate University, Dr. Kenneth Morgan, went to Tehran. And he said in the Western world, people do not know about Shiaism. So he encouraged Dr. Nasser to write something about Shiaism. And at that time, Dr. Nasser was very young. He said, no, I'm not the person. He was in his 20s or early 30s. He said, a person who can do is Allama Tabatabai. And at that time, it was summer, and Allama used to go to Daraka, if I'm right, which is mountainous area near Tehran. He didn't stay in home, so they went there. So Allama excused himself. At that time, Allama was working on Mizan. But Dr. Morgan and Dr. Nasser insisted. So Allama took a 6 months break from Mizan, and he wrote a book, Shiite Islam, which has been translated and edited by Dr. Nasser, and it is available. You can download that book on PDF. It's free PDF, and it's a beautiful book. And it is explaining the Shia and Sunni theology. Now, Nasai, who is one of the 6 hadith compilers of my Sunni brothers, Nasai, and he has, in his compilation, he has a book, complete volume written on Mawla Ali ibn Abi Talib. Nasai writes there that one day the Prophet entered his house and his shoe was broken. And he called Ali and he said, go and mend my shoes, and gave it to Ali. So Imam Ali started mending the shoes. Some Sahabis came. So the Prophet was having a discussion with them, and he said, look, I am a fighter of the Tanzeel-e-Quran, and I have read the philosophy of Mullah Sadra, and if Allah gives me that opportunity, we'll discuss that philosophy sometimes later. What Mullah Sadra says is, you have your 5 worldly senses and you have your 5 intellectual senses. So the Prophet used to come out of his worldly senses and reach the highest level of the intellectual sense, and that's when the Quran used to be revealed, and then he had to come back to his worldly senses to give the Quran to us. And that process used to be even physically very taxing on the Prophet. So he was a fighter. Even in winter seasons, the Prophet used to shiver and the Prophet used to sweat. So the Prophet was a fighter in the Tanzeel-e-Quran. And the Prophet said, there is someone else who is a fighter for the Ta'weel-e-Quran, the esoteric meaning of the Quran. There are some verses, if you read, you don't need any exegesis of tafsir, you can understand them. Those are the exoteric verses, but there are some verses our intellect cannot go there. So Allah had appointed someone after the Prophet to interpret those verses, that is the Ta'weel-e-Quran. All the Sahabas were very happy, and they asked him, who is the person? The Prophet turned around and he said, he is the person who is mending my shoes. Salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So coming back to Shiite Islam by Allama Tabatabai, he discusses, and fine gentleman he was, and he discusses the differences in the Shia and Sunni theology. He says he doesn't have any problem with, historically there were 3 Khalifas. We don't have any problem with that. That is history, we cannot deny that. But when it comes to the theology, like we discussed the 59th verse of Surah An-Nisa yesterday, obey Allah, obey the Prophet and those in command. And if you don't agree, just go back to Allah and the Prophet. So here comes the difference. Okay, we are not agreeing with them. So we are following our Imam and the Prophet, and it's in a Hadith Taqlaim that follow the Quran and follow my Ahl Bayt. We are doing that. But when it comes to the esoteric meaning of the Quran, no, we just cannot accept that at all. It is only Ali ibn Abi Talib and his family who can give us the esoteric meaning of the Quran. And that is what is recorded in Nasai. Salawat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And the corruption of the Nawasib, like in Ibn Arabi, and Dr. Nasser has written very good books about the philosophy and Sufism of Ibn Arabi, but in the beginning, he's written a book, Khawasim wa al-Khawasim, that has been translated in English, and it is again available free online, and in which he writes, if you do not follow those vested with command, you deserve to be killed. This words, their interpretation of the words, you deserve to be killed. Hussain did not follow. The person in command, Yazid, Hussain deserved to be killed. This is what the theology was. And then and that legacy is present even today. Zakir Naik. One thing I appreciate Prime Minister Modi, the Hindu fundamentalist, I really appreciate him for one thing he has done. He cannot come back to India. If he comes back, he is in jail. Yazid Razi Allah Ta'ala Anhu, that's a term that has been coined. Yazid Razi. And I can, after this, I can get it on YouTube, and Yazid Razi Allah Ta'ala Anhu. And then there is one person here, Yasir Khazi. Please Google his, go to his YouTubes, what Yasir Khadir says. Hussain was a very ambitious, power-greedy person. Yazid killed him. And he does not blame Yazid. He just blamed two people, Umar ibn Saad and Ibn Ziyad. And he keeps Yazid very, very clean. And this is the legacy of those Nawasib we have been discussing. And I won't let the Shias, or my brother Shias and my sister Shias respond. I will let Charles Dickens respond. The famous British novelist. Charles Dickens said, if Hussain fought in Karbala for his quench for worldly desires, why did he take his sister, his wives and little children? Why? I mean, he was an ambitious, power-greedy person. Why did Zainab go there, Zubab go there, Ali Asghar go there? Why did Layla go there? So, it is my reason that Hussain sacrificed his life only for Islam. The father of my nation of origin, Mahatma Gandhi, has said that I learned from Hussain how to be victorious even if you are being oppressed. And in Gandhi's book, and one of the revolts he had against the British, symbolically Gandhi took 72 people along with him. It started with, it's called Dandi March, 72 people, because of the 72 people of Karbala. The first Nobel laureate of India, Rabindranath Tagore, he had said that the event of Karbala is undoubtedly the biggest sacrifice by humanity for a religion in the history of the world. A Hindu is saying that, and look what these people are saying. We don't have to respond. There are so many quotes, there are so many followers of the Imam. Okay, what did Hussain do? When he sacrificed, what did Hussain do? Hussain proved with his consciousness that numerical superiority is not important. You were 50, 60,000 and he was only 72. And numerical superiority is not important at all. Karbala projects a battle between the virtuous and the wicked. Karbala projects a battle between the right and the wrong. Karbala projects a battle with the head of the virtuous, Hussain ibn Ali, and with the head of the impiety, Yazid ibn Muawiyah. That is what Karbala is all about. There was a proverb, the might is the right. What Hussain did, he reversed the proverb, the right is the might. The proverb was reversed from might is the right to right is the might. And 1400 years have happened, and that victory has been so everlasting. And it can only be achieved by the total trust he had in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, one piece of information, and this book has been translated, Abu Mikhnaf. He has minuted the events of Karbala. He has minuted, and the Shia alim, when they recite about the martyrdom, this has been recorded by Abu Mikhnaf. And look at the animosity. I have heard Yasir Khazi, the Houston guy, saying, oh, Abu Mikhnaf, he was nothing, he just falsified the information. He was not a scholar at all. I have got the complete 40 volumes of Tafsir al-Tabari, very important historian, a Sunni historian, and the 40th volume is the index, a full index, because it's 40 volumes. So when I go and search Abu Mikhnaf, Tabari has used Abu Mikhnaf 360 times in his history. Even Baladari, who was a prominent Sunni historian, has extensively used Abu Mikhnaf. Now, even today, Even today, that is the legacy of the Umayyah going on. And what is happening is, like we discussed, the two major themes of Islam. One is the spiritual, and the second is the social, serving humanity. The socio-political, when the alliance happened 200 years back between Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab and Muhammad ibn Saud, one of the things they have done is they have gone to Karbala. The Persian kings had so much of ornamentation at the tomb of Imam Hussain. They looted and they killed 5,000 Muslims in Karbala. This is their socio-political. So it's such a weak. And even Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, who was born in Najd, even his father and his brother had ostracized him. They had kicked him out of Najd. So he went to Diriyah, which is near Riyadh, and where he had a collision with Saud, and that started. And after the First World War, the Britishers supported them, and luckily they had the oil, and then the movement started, which is corrupting our religion today. Two factors they have: Allah, 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 bidda, bidda, bidda. I assure you, all my brothers and sisters sitting over here, I can guarantee that to my Allah, that every breath my brothers and sisters are taking are thanking Allah. I don't have to keep saying Allah, 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 because every breath is Allah's. Every action is Allah's. He is our sustainer. So what is the point? Why? To show your weakness. You say Allah, Allah. If you see the last 25, 30 years, Muslims have been killed. Let's India, Hindus killing Muslims. China, Muslims getting killed. Jewish people. Let's sit down and do the statistics. Let's count. I guarantee you, only 20% of the Muslims would have been killed by the Chinese or the Hindus or the Jews. 80% of the Muslims in the name of Allah. Yesterday we have seen what the will of Allah is, the pluralism. You are talking about Allah and you are taking away innocent lives. Are you complying with the Quran? Because if you take one innocent life, you have killed the entire humanity. Now, what had happened, Muawiyah installed Yazid, and Muawiyah had warned Yazid of two people: the son of Abu Bakr, Abdullah ibn Abu Bakr, the son of Umar, the son of Zubair, and the son of Ali. Those three people, they did not revolt, but there was the son of Ali who refused to give the bayat to Yazid. And there are two major philosophies about Karbala. One, the Nawasib says that he was power hungry, like we have been discussing. He was power hungry. When he went to Makkah, he was instigated by Abdullah ibn Zubair to go and fight. His ambition, Hussein's ambition, led him to lose his reasoning. He miscalculated the strength of Yazid. He relied too much on the Kufans, and he deserved to be killed. That is one philosophy. And not all Sunnis don't have it. Only these Nawasibs and their legacies. The Shia philosophy is, it was a divine plan, because the Shias believe that the Prophet was informed by Gabriel that your grandson is going to lay his life and save your religion. But the people who did not have that intellect, who had only worldly senses, did not recognize that. Like in Hudaybiyah, people did not recognize that there was a person in Hudaybiyah who had said, is he really the Prophet? Recorded in Tabari. And when my Mawla had, like a slight disobedience he had done to the Prophet, when he was asked to remove Muhammad and Rasulullah, he dropped the pen. Ali ibn Abi Talib had dropped the pen. So that is the second. Finally, it is What I think personally, this is my personal opinion, is yes, it was a divine plan, but the divine plan had a human factor of free will. Hussain, even though it was a divine plan, he had a free will. Hussain had three options. One, go and do a bayat with Yazid. Easy. Yazid would have given a lot of money. You stay in Medina, do Quran and dua. Yazid wouldn't have had. Hussain could have left that region, come to a place like India, and few people would have become Muslims, but there would have been a Banu Umayyah's Islam. And the third option Hussain had to stand up, which Hussain did. Even though it was a divine plan, Hussain did out of his own free will. Yes, even Yazid's army had a free will. And what they did. Even Hur had a free will. And look what Hur did in the last moment. In the last moment. So how you can use your free will. Hur is the best example of what repentance is. Karbala shook the nation. The impact it did was Muslims started realizing, even though the corruption had started, many Muslims started realizing. And when Muslims started realizing, they started disobeying the Umayyads when it came to religious matters, slowly. They were still terrorized by them, but they started disobeying. Even Yazid's son, Muawiyah II, he condemned his own father and grandfather, and he refused to take charge. And he died very young when Yazid had nominated his son Muawiyah II. That was the impact of Karbala. And 12 years later, or rather the turmoil was for 12 years when Yazid's army had come to Medina, and the only instruction Yazid had is leave the children of Ali alone and do whatever you want to do. And they looted, they plundered, they raped women in Medina. Then when Abdullah ibn Zubair revolted, they had distorted the Holy Kaaba. That's what Yazid's army did. And finally, if we are wailing, we are mourning. If we are wailing, if we are mourning, if we are doing Khamazani or Matamzani, I have never done it. But who do it, that is an emotion. That's a person's emotion. If you are wailing, it's a person's emotion. And there's nothing bid'ah about it. The azah here, brothers and sisters, whenever you are in the azah of Hussain ibn Abi Talib, Hussain ibn Ali, your heart softens. And when you say Allah, 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 bid'ah, your heart hardens and you do all those terrorist activities. That is the difference between the azah of Hussain and that so-called Islam. Look at the concept. Go back, take your imagination to Karbala. Hussain is left alone. Everyone has gone. Everyone has gone. Everyone has gone. Hussain is left alone. There is a mother, Rubab. She has got a 6-month-old child. 3 days, no milk or no water. Just imagine the child, how he must have shrunk. And that is a mother. The mother couldn't see the child. The bond between mother and children is such, when a mother is helpless, she can go and steal food. And I don't think, in my eyes, it is not a sin when the mother is helpless and the child is dying. A thought went across Rubab's mind. Why don't I slip out, go to the river Euphrates and get some water for my Ali Asghar? Then she was a loyal wife. She said, my husband, since the morning, who is thirsty, who is hungry, has been watching so many dead people, how has been getting the bodies of the dead, and how can I do that to my child? When she was thinking, she heard the footsteps of Hussain. Hussain came to bid a final goodbye, and Rabab showed Ali Asghar to Hussain, a shrunken child, and Rabab begged to Hussain, "Oh my Lord, get some water for this child, 6 months old." Hussain took the child, but Rabab requested, "Please cover him up with your robe, because there's so much of sun. He'll shrink, he'll wither away." Hussain takes Ali Asghar, goes to the field. Now the Yazidi army is very happy. They think that Hussain has come to reconcile with Yazid, and he is getting Quran as an arbitration. And then when Hussain removes the cloak, they see a little baby. Hussain said, "If you think I have done a crime, it is okay. But what is this 6 months old done to you?" Then Hussain says, "If you think I will take that water, you give water to him." He spread his cloak, put Ali Asghar there. And the Yazidi army was getting emotional. Umar ibn Saad went to Hormala, said, "Oh Hormala, kill him, because there might be a revolt here. And if you kill him, I will get, Yazid is going to give a big reward to you." Umar ibn Saad he was an ace archer. He took his first arrow and he hit. And at that time, Hussain lifted Ali Asghar, the arrow missed. Then he took aim again with the second arrow. But in the background, he saw a lady with a veil. That was the mother of Ali Asghar. His focus got diverted, his arrow missed. Hurmala was very embarrassed. 2 times the arrow missed, and third time he hit the arrow. And just imagine the neck of a 6 months old. It killed Ali Asghar, and the arrow pierced into the hand of Hussain. Hussain took the body, went inside. Rabab almost fainted. And then when Rabab got up, Rabab said, "My Lord, I have a request for you. Please bury him. Otherwise, this army is going to totally demolish this body into pieces of flesh." The Urdu poet says this marsiya, "नन्ही सी खबर खोद के असगर को गाड़ के हुसैन उठ खड़े हुए दामन को झाड़ के." Hussain dug a small grave, buried Ali Asghar, and he got up, shrugging off the dust that had accumulated on his robe, and he was ready for the final sacrifice. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. Matam Hussain.